I feel like I know somebody else who, got rich and famous. A mutual friend was like, yeah, now his best friend is like this 76-year-old rich guy.
Yeah.
76-year-old rich white guy. Like at some point, those are the only people who understand.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
How is Chris Martin your best friend, Jay-Z? You used to sell cocaine. How are you hanging out with the dude who made Yellow? That feels a little off. Boom, 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 shoot, there it is. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another phenomenal episode of My Mama Told Me, the podcast where we dive deep into the pockets of black conspiracy theories, and we work to prove that Idris Elba only jerks off to slightly younger pictures of Idris Elba. What do you want him to go on porn sites and look at regular people? Fuck no. That man needs to look at himself. If Idris Elba gets horny, he goes and watches Tyler Perry's Daddy's Little Girls. And he goes, oh, look at me 10 years ago. A gorgeous man. A beautiful man. And that's how he gets his rocks off. He's a sicko, but I respect it. Anyway, I'm your host, Langston Kerman. I'm happy to be here as always. You can already hear my guest voice. Oh, I'm so happy he's here. He's hilarious. He's such a great comedian, actor. You know him as one of the creators of Sherman Showcase. You know him as one of the creators of Southside. You know him from Marlon. Just hilarious. Formerly my boss. Maybe he'll be my boss again someday. Who knows what the world will do. Give it up for my guest, Diallo Riddle, everybody.
Thank you for that introduction, Langston. And no, I was never your boss, man. I was the brother holding you back and sabotaging you at every turn.
Sure.
You would be a full year ahead right now, but me and Bashir wouldn't allow it.
You cut me off at my knees, and I can't thank you enough. I cannot thank you enough. I'm so happy you're here.
I'm happy to be here, man, because, here's the thing. I was raised in a household of conspiracy theories. Like my father and my older brother, like they would bring all these theories home. And literally, I knew not to trust the news from the age of 8. You know what I'm saying? Like I was just like, oh, look at Reagan's a very popular president. They disabused me of that very quickly.
Ronald Reagan?
That's actually just the truth. That's just the truth. But what it did was it instilled in me a certain cynicism and a skeptic nature that has stayed with me throughout my life.
I love that. Listen, as somebody who lives in skepticism at all times, I thrive in it. I'm just happy to hear that you were raised that way, and I hope that you're raising your own children that way. I hope you're offering them.
I put them in front of the TV. I say, believe everything. Here's why, because I'm using them as moles, if you will. Like I'm literally going to integrate them into the world, and then they can come back to me and tell me what the conventional wisdom is. And that's the system I've set up.
As long as something corrupt is happening, or at least building towards happening, I'm into it.
Exactly.
You came with a conspiracy theory that I think, if I'm being honest, is one that I'm not sure that I don't agree with. It's rare. It happens on this show.
That had way too many negatives. I'm going to have to go back and listen to this.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm trying to dance.
Or 3 negatives, because if it's 3 negatives, then you don't believe it.
Well, let's get into it. You said, my mama told me
Michael Jackson is innocent.
Let's define the word innocent. No, you know what? Okay, so here it is, guys. I'm going to be very honest. Mm-hmm. I saw clips. I never saw the whole, documentary Leaving Netherlands, but I saw some of the worst moments on clips. And here's the thing. I also heard and saw, when I was reading articles and doing follow-up about the lack of, just the dates didn't add up. Mm-hmm. They do that really ominous, zoom on the picture of the train station at Neverland. And then it turns out that train station didn't even have that area in the year that they say that it did.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something, because I'm a huge fan of true crime documentaries, and I'll watch almost any episode of Dateline. And, like when Making a Murderer came out, like I was watching that.
Yep.
I feel like it was actually Making a Murderer that really showed me more than Unsolved Mysteries and all these other ones that, just like any filmmaker, the people who direct these documentaries, they come to and I'm not one of those people who's like, oh, it's biased, so you can't believe anything. No, that's not true. But they do come with an agenda. And I just think the people who made Neverland came with an agenda. It's one person making a prosecutorial case against Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Upon just even basic scrutiny, some of their dates and timelines fell apart. Now, you started off by saying, do I think Michael Jackson is innocent? I actually will go so far as to say that I wouldn't want my kids in those relationships with anybody, much less, a pop singer. You know what I'm saying?
I think you're speeding right along into this, and I think you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do. But I think let's unpack a little bit. Okay. Let's unpack a little bit of what you said a second ago, because I think it's important that from that Leaving Neverland documentary, which by all accounts is a very sad, very heartbreaking tale of two young men who, if what they're saying is true, were sexually assaulted over a long period of time by Michael Jackson. But there is, in fact, a very clear case being made by the documentarian to tell a story. What be that story true or false, they're shaping a story, and that does ultimately have an effect on the way that we understand what's happening out in the world.
Yeah, it's got its framing devices. And look, I knew when I came on the show, I was like, do I really want to talk about this? Because I've definitely talked to friends of mine who are like, no, I saw that documentary and that was enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
I will point out that it is one documentary, and I feel like you have to look at a lot of evidence.
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody who I respect a lot. Because he's a public figure, I'm not going to use his name. I actually know public figures on both sides of this argument. But what I told him still remains true. I think that Michael Jackson was maybe inappropriate.
Yep.
I mean, I wouldn't allow my children to those kind of situations. But
and you shouldn't.
And I wouldn't, and I would not. But I think it takes a step further to go as far as to say that this man was sexually assaulting people. I just think that that's just a step so far. And that's not to say anything against the people who bring those charges, because obviously I think that everybody who brings the charges needs to be heard. But I do think that, similar to some other high profile cases, I need to see the evidence. And when I see the evidence in this case, falling apart upon very almost Googleable, research. It just makes me think, is this evidence legit?
Well, I think you said something really important in this, and it's sort of how you kicked it off, is that I don't know that even personally I'm maintaining that Michael Jackson is pure of heart. I don't see him as an innocent man as much as I'm not 100% certain that every crime he was sort of charged with or accused of is in fact one that should be placed on him forever and always.
Not just that. I'd even say that, before people just say, oh man, God, this guy really likes Michael Jackson. I'm not the biggest Michael Jackson fan. Can I put that out there? This is not, I'm not the guy who had a Thriller poster on the wall walking around with a glove. I definitely was the guy who thought that he had some albums, as time went on.
I love that your instinct was like, let me be clear. I want to distance myself from the music. Not the man, it's the music I'd like to distance myself from.
Michael Jackson had an amazing run, okay? He had an amazing run as a kid.
Yeah.
And Bashir and I always joke about, do we have to cancel the kid too? Can we not even listen to Jackson 5?
Yeah, Little Michael. We can't love Little Michael anymore.
Little Michael, if anything, was an absolute victim, and that's nothing funny about that. But I just want to make it very clear, guys. I'm not making this case because I want to go back and listen to a bunch of Michael Jackson songs.
Right.
I've been a DJ since I was in college. 90% of Michael Jackson's catalog, I probably never need to hear again in life. It's like Hypnotized by Biggie. It's like Electric Relaxation by A Tribe Called Quest. Mm-hmm. As a DJ in the 90s, there are certain songs that they might as well be Respect by Aretha Franklin. I don't hear a song, I Feel Good by James Brown. There's certain songs, I don't hear the song anymore.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? Like, I got to hear a song that I haven't heard 10,000 times in my lifetime. So no, I'm not fighting for my right to hear Beat It. I do
think there is something really fascinating about people being like, you know, there is an argument that people are making where it's like, I want to rock with you for the 188th time this month. That is my right as an American. It's like, relax, dog. You heard it. The song ain't going nowhere. It's exactly the way you remember it in your head.
It's gonna happen. No, seriously. I feel like anytime I say how I feel about Michael Jackson, I feel like I'm put in a position where all of a sudden it seems like I'm defending my favorite artist of all time. I think that, you know, I loved Captain EO, you know, as a kid, but like I'm just not that guy. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm making a case because I like the artist. I'm actually making a case because I'm really big. I feel the same way about, you know, when our outgoing president says that there was voter fraud. Like, okay, show me the fraud. Can't do it, then I'm not believing you.
Yeah.
You know, with this one, I would like to have, you know, maybe somebody has to do the counter Leaving Neverland and present that evidence. But even though there are a lot of people with YouTube
Neverland.
reactions.
Hanging out in Neverland. Perfectly safe.
Neverland, you are here. Just like a map.
I think you brought us into this via the Leaving Neverland vehicle, right? And I'm curious to know how you felt in relation to like his earlier accusations, specifically like, you know, when 1993 comes around and they're saying Michael Jackson is, you know, assaulting a young 13-year-old boy. What are your thoughts then? Were you on the side of Michael Jackson? Were you in disbelief? Did you not care because you had heard enough of his music over at this point? Like, where were you?
Yeah, I should probably say that by 93, I feel like most people listening to R&B by that point had moved on from Michael Jackson. Like, Michael was distinctly a pop artist who, you know, just he wasn't at the center of the culture anymore. So to a certain extent, it didn't. I almost said it didn't rock my world in either direction. I'm just going to speak in Michael Jackson titles.
Sure. There's a lot of them. You got options.
I know. Exactly.
The way you make me feel is you're a criminal, Michael. And I am still dealing with
the man in the mirror. You're dealing with the man in the mirror. I want to see. I was waiting for you to try and slip in Liberian Girl.
I couldn't. Listen, I couldn't get to a second one. I'm not that quick, but we'll get there.
Hey, listen, let me, gosh, how serious do we want to get? Let me just go on the record as saying that as the survivor of not the worst abuse, but there was definitely, there was a weirdo on my street, and definitely he was showing some of us kids some stuff that we didn't need to be seeing. So I guess you could say that I'm a survivor in that sense.
Yeah.
And I've never said that in any interview anywhere. So it feels weird to make that publicly known. Like, there was a weirdo on our street. He showed us like some pornographic cartoons. I'll never forget going to my mom and saying, "Hey, look, there's a weirdo on the street." Like, I am one of the main people who feel like there's no exception to the rule. Like, if someone is doing inappropriate stuff with kids, I'm the father of 3 children.
Yeah.
I want that person mud stomped. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I feel like there's no and to a certain extent, I want them treated, because I also recognize that, like, it's probably in some ways more of a mental illness than we used to. So just physical violence against that person is probably not going to solve anything. I mean, like, if anything, I would love us to figure out ways to treat people with those proclivities so that, you know, maybe we can do away with it, like the measles.
Well, I think you're getting to something that's really important that often, I think, especially with celebrities, goes overlooked, because we're constantly defending their artistry or defending like the goodness that we've built in our minds about who they are, is that at the end of the day, whether Michael Jackson was in fact sexually assaulting kids, or whether to his admission, he was just laying with them and, you know, having like sleepovers and shit, he was an unhealthy person. This is objectively, it's not even up for grabs. Yeah. This is an unhealthy person who needed a type of treatment that people weren't willing to give him because they wanted to defend his character first, or, you know, defend his music first. And that's a problem.
Yeah. I think that we should never make excuses or allowances for people because we like their craft. Their craft is one thing, but again, these are children. These are the most vulnerable, and we have to. I can feel myself even getting more and more serious about this as we talk about it. But it's just because I don't want anybody to hear the first 5 minutes of this conversation and be like, "Oh man."
No, listen, you're doing the right thing. I'm an idiot. And you should make sure that that's clear from the beginning of all and end of all of this. But I will say that
run this clip at the beginning of the interview and then run the rest.
We do a cold open. Maybe I'll make it a real serious cold open
because I don't need the hate. I don't need the hate. Hate DMs.
I will say that even to the point you're making, the idea of like needing to protect the innocent, a lot of times what we do is like, well, he made this amazing song, so I need to defend that. And it's like, bro, that kid he hurt might make a better song. Let the kid grow up to go make a thing that you might also appreciate, maybe more than anything Michael Jackson did.
I would refuse anybody who ever defended Michael on the base of his music. Now, to go back to the crux of the show, which is about conspiracy, I don't know. I don't think that there's like a cabal, at Sony Records that's like, well, we really want to get him to sell the catalog to the Beatles, so we're going to bring him down. I don't think it operates like that.
Yeah.
This may be less of me believing in a conspiracy theory and more of me believing that the conventional wisdom might be overlooking some stuff. I think it's very easy for South Park and other people in our field, like, to punch at Michael Jackson because he's the easiest of targets, right?
Well,
he's black. By the way, he's dead. So again, really easy target.
He can't swing back at all.
Michael being alive with Tupac. That's not my wheelhouse. But I do believe that I think it was very easy for the industry to believe it because he did come across as sort of like a weird person. I do think that there are people in society who they might just be sort of asexual. And I think that, again, that's why I think that Michael, having been robbed of his childhood, really did, in his rich man bubble, because we know that the rich man bubble's a thing, convinced himself that it was normal for him to have sleepovers like he was 8 like the rest of the kids.
Yes, I think too that Michael's choices were very clearly informed by the childhood he lost. And whether or not he then
and he didn't have anybody in his life to sort of intercede and be like, nah, Mike, don't do this. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I feel like the Jackson family is so big, and I don't know any of them personally, but I wonder why. I'll put it like this. Marlon Wayans is a good friend of mine, and I'm always impressed by, like, whenever you see the Wayans family together, like, they are constantly keeping each other in check. Like, there's no way that any of them will ever become a true weirdo because they all just kind of check one another.
Sure.
And I find it hard to believe that the Jackson family, that there wasn't somebody in the Jackson family, but maybe it was the original Jackson.
Well,
here's everybody talk about it.
Here's the problem is that with the Wayans family, to your point, they've all in various ways gone on to do things for themselves and make awesome shit. So when they have a conversation, they're checking each other almost not as equals, but sort of closer to equals. But the issue is Jermaine didn't make Thriller. And so he has to kind of shut the fuck up when the conversation kicks in. Do you know what I mean?
Let's talk about it, right? Let's talk about it. Like, nobody listened to Randy.
Right.
Marlon Jackson, like, he barely had bass in his voice, apparently. Like, nobody was listening to anybody else. No, that part is true. I also think again, I feel like this is not even a funny point. It's probably just a real point. There's a big difference between how Howell Wayans, the patriarch, raised an amazing family of sort of well-adjusted individuals. And then you got Joe. And I think that it's understood that Joe, he produced Michael and LaToya. And I mean, like, I feel like Rebe must have just been ducking stuff because she seemed to come out really normal. And Centipede is a classic. So if y'all ever come for Rebe, I might defend her on the basis of music alone.
You have, to be clear, you've defended Rebe for her music harder than you've defended Michael for his. And that's
Centipede
stunning.
Is a classic, man. Centipede, listen. Yeah, don't say nothing bad about Rebe. I won't take it.
I think exactly to the point you're making, Joe
need
Jackson.
Reeby's This Is It. I need Reeby's This Is It.
Sure.
Like, let me see how she pulled together her album.
Joe Jackson created a toxic environment that ultimately was guaranteed to turn people into difficult figures. It doesn't matter whether or not we see them as monsters or heroes. None of that matters. The point is that type of environment doesn't allow somebody to grow up normal and healthy as we sort of like have standardized those words.
Yeah, I think, listen, his tendencies as a father have greatly helped our music collection.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it did leave a trail of destruction in
and
several
he turned
lives.
himself into a kitty cat before he died. He looked like a goddamn human kitty cat through all those surgeries
with the hat and the makeup.
It's like,
yeah, you know what?
How did this cute kitty cat do such horrible things to this family of children? That's awful.
It's, Black Hello Kitty walks into the room. You don't assume that he's a monster. So, and by the way, again, this is sort of us going off of what we've been told. But here,
no, the kitty cat part is fact. That is
we have our eyes.
That's objectively true.
We're gonna believe our lying eyes on that one. But it's funny, man, because nowadays I feel like as time goes on, I sort of start to question some of the things that I've heard about famous people in general. Like, because you understand how things can get exaggerated or just made up. Like, you start to understand that some of the things that we've been told all our lives might not even be true.
Yeah.
But I do feel like, again, with the Joe Jackson thing, I feel like there's enough evidence to back it up. And with the Michael Jackson stuff, it just, even going back to 93, there was always a part of me like, well, maybe there's a way to prove it totally. Again, I feel like it's dicey because, as is often the case with sexual abuse, it does come down to a case of, this person said versus this person said. So you may not get the nice, clean evidence that you seek. But again, I think that's why documentarians who do documentaries like Leaving Neverland don't mess up 2 or 3 key facts, because then it's just like if you're in an argument and people, you might be making the best point you've ever made, but if you throw out a statistic and somebody immediately debunks that, it just throws shade on everything else you said.
Right. And especially now, I think we live in a society where people are constantly trying to find ways to delegitimize basic evidence or delegitimize basic arguments. And so to that point, if you're being irresponsible in the way that you're presenting information that you know to be true or false, then you're going to be held accountable, and maybe not in a way that's fair always. That like these Leaving Neverland documentarians very well could have been making a very valid case against Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
But by omitting huge sections of information for their own wants, you're basically opening yourself up for people to be like, yep, I'm not going to believe it. I'm not going to listen. Fuck it.
Yeah. And by the way, that to me, that train depot story that they tell in there, it just sent me right out, like to know that wasn't true. It just sent me right out. And it's almost like to go back to true crime stories and Dateline, you can tell that in COVID, I can watch Dateline because it's real people. That's the part that I can't get over. And the thing on Dateline, it happens like every 5 episodes or so. There's always like the prosecutor who didn't introduce a piece of evidence that he knew about that kind of like, this guy is guilty, but there is a piece of evidence that would not help your case. And eventually the defense finds out about it and they bring it forth, and then the whole sentence gets tossed out.
Right.
And then all your hard work is done. So, if anything, I would just say, just fact check and then double fact check.
My wife and I have been watching a shit ton of unsolved mysteries, right?
So good, right?
Love unsolved mysteries. And the thing, and I'm sure you'll feel the same way, the thing with unsolved mysteries, almost every episode is the police ain't shit. Like the entire, that's always the theme. Yes, he murdered her. Yes, he stole these things. It's always, the things they're arguing are never false, but the police weren't shit in every single episode, which means that this evidence doesn't get taken care of the way it's supposed to or found. And then ultimately this person is missing forever and always because y'all didn't do your jobs.
By the way, you bring up a funny point because my wife, I'm always like, let's watch Unsolved Mysteries. And she gets frustrated because, she's like, I prefer mysteries that get solved. Like, that's her big thing. Like, she's just like, I can't take this because now I want to know what happened to Alonzo Brown.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of Alonzo Brown, they're finding out information about a lot of these cases.
Yeah.
I think that, so, like, I love a good unsolved mystery, man. That's my thing.
Yeah.
By the way, about unsolved mysteries, even they have different directors for every episode, and this goes back to Finding Neverland, which is that there are episodes of that show where I can tell that they're trying to get me to like a person, where I can tell though that like I would not like this person.
Yeah.
Or they'll gloss over something, but you can read between the lines. There was one episode where it was very clear to me that the guy was kind of a war hawk. You know what I mean? Like, he was in government, he was kind of a war hawk, and they kind of, and by the way, would not suggest that because he's a war hawk, he should die. But I'm just saying that, like, there was sort of like a strain of like that old fashioned sort of pre-Trump George W. Bush. He was a patriot. You know what I mean? Like, they were kind of going, and I was like,
I know.
It sounds like he was, trying to topple democratically elected government.
Yeah, I know
in Central
exactly.
America.
I know exactly which episode you're talking about. It's the one where the dude, like, they have all that footage of the dude wandering off, and then he magically is sort of like found in that big trash dump.
in the dump.
In the dump.
In the landfill.
And to that point, I totally agree. They skip past a whole bunch of like the murders and atrocities that he was probably a part of throughout all of the 90s and 2000s, just to be like, he was a retiree. He believed in America. And it's like, come on, dog. He wasn't innocent. This ain't
He was not in it. And by the way, they were sort of hinting that like maybe because he had helped CIA operatives overseas, that maybe somebody had gone to. I was like, to me, this looks like a man who is suffering from a mental breakdown of some kind. Like, it was so obvious to me. Like, and you just got the sense that nobody in the family could admit to it. No, I'm laughing because now I'm realizing that you and I could easily do a unsolved mysteries podcast. And I would be
hey, listen, as soon as we crack this Michael case, we're turning this bad boy around. Yeah. Heat it back up, Olivia. We got one more round to go, and it's about unsolved mysteries.
Solved mysteries with Langston and Diallo.
We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more Diallo Riddle and more My Mama Told Me. And we are back.
Supposed to schmeat his meat with this shit, bro. What the fuck?
Yeah, we're back here with more Diallo Riddle, more My Mama Told Me. We're still talking about Michael Jackson and the possibility that he might in fact be innocent, kind of the crimes that he's being accused of.
Yeah, let's be clear. Innocent of the crimes that would get him locked away, not necessarily being the most healthy individual.
No, he's not a healthy person, and he certainly, has a lot of things that he probably needed help unpacking that nobody could, but maybe he didn't do it. Maybe he did. Who the fuck cares? The man died 10 years ago, at least.
Yeah, it's been 10 years. It's been a decade. That's amazing. That doesn't quite feel like a decade to me. But then when I think about where I was 10 years ago, then it's like, oh, that was 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's get into some of this research, because I do think, to the point that you were making about the way that celebrity sort of controls our interpretation of the things that are happening out in the world, one of the things that I immediately sort of like latched onto in sort of doing this research was the massive amount of celebrities that came out even after the Leaving Neverland documentary to defend Michael Jackson. There were still like shit tons of people. So that included Corey Feldman, Macaulay Culkin, Geraldo Rivera, Kanye West.
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry, Corey Feldman. No, seriously, I have kind of an obsession with Corey Feldman, because do feel like, listen, Corey Feldman and Corey Haim, it's a function of my age. Like, those were my heroes growing up. They were in my, not the same way like Martin Luther King. I didn't have like a mural on the wall with like Malcolm, Michael, Martin, and
I want to believe.
Corys.
I want to believe that you had a painting in your house with Malcolm X baptizing Corey Feldman while Martin Luther King watched on, like that Tyrese painting.
With the other Corey.
The other Corey's in heaven watching this all down.
You know, every black screenplay writer I know has that, you know, Martin and Malcolm script in their back pocket. But what about a Corey's from a black point of view? I don't even know.
The Corey's. The brothers Corey.
The brother Corey's. You know, they were coming up in Hollywood when it was severely messed up for child actors. And I do think that, you talk about, is it even a conspiracy theory? I believe everything that Corey Feldman says about, you know, some powerful person in Hollywood who's basically going from set to set, abusing the child actors. I believe that because I don't think that's something that anybody would ever make up.
That's what's fascinating about the Corey Feldman of it all. And granted, I also think that he falls in the category of somebody who is unwell. But I think what's fascinating is he has been somebody who's been very open and honest about the experience that he had getting sexually assaulted as a child, and remains to this day somebody who's like, but Michael ain't do that to me. Michael he left me. That wasn't our energy.
He was like, that wasn't the problem. He was like, Michael just wanted to be one of the kids, but then there were definite abusers out there. And he says that, you know, they messed up Corey Haim for life, which is tragic because I do go back and I watch movies like The Lost Boys and some of their other movies. And I'm like, man, I used to watch Corey Haim and Feldman work. And to me, this was comedy. Mm-hmm. You know, the kid who played Chunk in The Goonies, like, that was comedy to me. I go back and I look and I
he's a lawyer now.
He's a lawyer. Him and Short Round, aka Data, the Asian actor, like they just bounced from the industry. Yeah. But what kills me is that like I watched how they deliver some of their lines, and I'm just like, oh yeah, gosh, you know what? As a kid and maybe even as an adult, if I ever say those words, that's typically how I say them because it got so ingrained in me. Like, so when I say they were my heroes, like, they were the kids who made me laugh. Yeah. And to think that they were going through that torment really just makes me sad. So yes, Corey Feldman, you know, he defended Mike. He was like, Mike was not the problem.
Yeah. And even, you know, other defenders, Macaulay Culkin, when asked about it, basically said that like there was never any incident between them. Yeah. And then people asked like, well, what do you do with the fact that you were in fact sharing a bed with a man who was 22 years your senior? And he said, and this is a point that makes sense to me now as an adult, is like, and not in the way that I think they were right to share beds, but like it makes sense as an argument. He was like, hey, that was my peer. I can't hang out with my classmates. I'm the most famous child on this planet Earth. So Michael was closer to like a work colleague than anybody else I could have.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder like where Macaulay's parents were. I mean, like, again, that's why I've always said that, like, it's not that I think Michael's innocent. I think it was grossly inappropriate on Michael's behalf.
Yep.
Super questionable judgment. I would cancel my friendship with another parent if I thought that they were allowing their child to do that. You know what I'm saying?
And like, I think that's so important.
That's the degree to which I am not here to say the man's innocent. I'm actually arguing a very small point that not everybody who's inappropriate is trying to do specific, you know, the specific things that were alleged against him. And that's the only thing I'm here to say.
And I think even more important what you're saying is like, there are so many people who were consenting parties in whatever this behavior was. His parents, agents, managers, a lot of people were helping to book these flights to Orlando and block out trips to Disney World so that these boys could spend a day with Michael Jackson, regardless of whether or not they believed or didn't believe that he was committing some sort of crime against these children.
Let me be very clear. These parents are the Camille Cosby of the Michael Jackson scandal. Sorry, Camille, but you came downstairs a few times and you had to see some stuff.
Camille, you fucked up, and we're calling you on your bluff, Camille. We know what you're up to, you sneaky old lady.
And I'll be honest, like, that's a family I hated to find that out because, like, you know, my father was a painter. Mm-hmm. In a good year, he could sell a piece to a Sidney Poitier. Cosby bought some of my father's art, like in around like 69, 1970. Camille's brother owned a gallery in Santa Monica, I want to say. And he was not a friend of the family, but like he was close enough that like anytime he had an exhibit, my father's pieces were almost always up on the wall, and we would go in there, and it was fun to hang out with Eric. Your brother's name is Eric.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was just, they were such a outstanding family that, you know, and for a long time before he decided to come out against Black youth in the mid 2000s, like it was just so cool to just think of, it was what Cosby represented.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like to the community.
And I think to that point, and it really goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is if we need to start working on a way of removing that level of like desire and want from our psyches, right? And the way that we see celebrities and see these big name people, because at the end of the day, that was just a family. It was just a man, his wife, their kids, and that doesn't mean that he's good or bad. And unfortunately, we later found out not good. He falls on the side of not good.
Like that's the thing. Like, I feel like there's so many good families, and they're actually, you know, I feel like I know a couple. There are a lot of decent people who are really famous and really wealthy. There are a lot of good, you know, decent people. It's just when you find out somebody who's an icon. And I mean, by the way, the 80s, if you had gone in a time machine to 1984 and pointed at like the biggest, you know, celebrities at the time, Bill Cosby, Prince, Michael Jackson, you were like, one of these people is never really going to have a sex scandal. Prince would have been not on anybody's list. You know, it just goes to show that like, you don't always know what's going on in people's life, no matter what persona they put out there. Because
exactly.
We would have all assumed Prince was the freak, and it turned out that he wasn't at all. So
yeah, you mean that dude in a mesh tank top is going to be the most decent of the three of them?
Black lingerie on the back of Dirty Mind album. Like, yeah, exactly. That guy is pretty damn normal. He doesn't smoke, drink, drug, and he's a Jehovah's Witness. Like,
yeah, he's probably going to knock on your door and try to tell you about getting into heaven and
not celebrating your birthday.
Yeah, but exactly. Otherwise, he's actually a pretty cool guy.
He's a really cool guy. I'm sorry, we strayed from our mission, but
no,
I had to jump out there.
Let's get into some of the hard facts, and let's
talk about the hard
means
facts.
Nothing. Wade Robson, who was one of the two accusers in the Leaving Neverland documentary, testified in the 2005 trial against Michael Jackson, where he maintained that Michael never demonstrated any inappropriate sexual behavior with him. Now, in 2011, however, Robson approached basically the co-executor of Michael Jackson's estate and asked about directing the Cirque du Soleil production of Michael Jackson, and was later turned down by the estate for the position. A year later, Robson then comes out with his book, or at least attempts to come out with a book, alleging the sexual assault from Michael Jackson. And so to your point, this is one of the things that doesn't really come up in the documentary, is the number of times that Wade, I think they mention that he flip-flops, whatever, but they're not mentioning sort of like the details in which sort of potentially could be leading to his change of heart regarding Michael's behavior.
Yeah, and you know, again, let me be very front. People, you know, survivors of sexual abuse change their story 100%. All the time. So, you know, like obviously he could have been covering for those years, and, you know, in the year after Michael died, he might have thought, you know, I'm going to take something negative and turn it into a positive by, you know, because I think, you know, even he would probably still recognize the genius of Michael's just purely his dancing craft. And he probably wanted to be a part of that on, you know, which I've seen that show, and it's actually a really good show. So I'm not, but that's not why I'm here to defend him.
I want that to be your big conclusion. Listen, the Cirque du Soleil show is I have to defend.
I'm not here to defend the Beatles, but I love. I'm not here to. No, I think that I want to be I don't want to be a boring guest, but I want to make it clear. I'm not even here to attack Wade, because I don't know what the man has seen. And there is definitely a world where they got some of their facts wrong in that documentary, and this man needs all our sympathy and all our heart because of what he's been through.
And I think to that point, to exactly the point that you're making, there is a very clear chance, and it's not even a chance, it's a high possibility that Wade is a victim of a type of trauma that he repressed these memories. He repressed these feelings. He was still thinking about Michael as a figure who he loved and cared about and didn't want to disappoint. And that allows him to go into the trial and say, this person didn't hurt me, when in fact he did. And even
say that, like, you know, Corey Feldman, he might have never tried anything with Corey Feldman. He might have never tried anything with Macaulay Culkin. He might have never tried anything with anybody but the two people, you know, in the documentary. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because in a weird way, maybe if you want to ascribe to him, like, you know, sinister thoughts, they're not famous like those other people. You know what I'm saying? So, like, there's definitely a world in which he did it one time, and one time's far too many. So, you know, again, to me, I think your point is actually more valuable in the sense that, again, if the documentarians knew something like the facts that you are bringing up, they should probably throw that in there so that it doesn't seem like they're cherry picking their evidence.
Yes. And I think that's the larger point here is that, and you made it from the beginning, that this really should just be about full transparency and allowing people to make their choice from there. And unfortunately, and this is where I sympathize with the people making the documentary, is that at the end of the day, even if you do give people the full evidence, a lot of their choices are being made based off of celebrity and the wants that they have for these people more than an honest, objective look at the facts that are laid in front of them. So, like, I'm going to, you know, cherry pick because y'all niggas wasn't going to believe me anyway. So here we go.
Right.
Fun is a heavy word in this conversation, but a really interesting.
I should have picked a conspiracy theory that involved, like, you know, people who are terrible people. But go ahead.
Listen, we've had to do OJ. We've had to do R. Kelly. He ain't the worst, I think. But one of the more interesting.
See, I think R. Kelly. Well, see, now I'm speaking on famous people who I've also never met. I believe in R. Kelly's case. Like, I just don't think in that case the dates add up. The girls have said what they said. Like, you know, I'm just like, where's the evidence that it's not true? You know,
right?
I mean? Like in R. Kelly's case, I'm just like, I'm not with that. But anyway,
I don't think most people are defending it. Anyway, one of the more interesting arguments that Michael started to make in regards to what was happening from the 1993 case all the way to the 2000 case was about this dude, Tom Sneddon. Do you know who Tom Sneddon is? Have you heard of him?
I do not.
He is the prosecutor on both cases. So the prosecutor for the 1993 case that's eventually thrown out, that Michael then has to pay like $20 million of, you know.
To who? Who did he have to pay to?
To the kid and his family. Basically, like saying like, hey, you know, to get rid of this, to make this go away, I'll give you money and we'll squash this.
Right.
That's what happens in 1993. But then Michael makes the argument that Tom Sneddon, who was that prosecutor, builds this vendetta against him. That he wants, he like spends the rest of the 90s and 2000s trying to find a way to take Michael down. And so Michael says, and this is an argument he makes, that Tom Sneddon, in fact, in like the early 2000s, leaks up with Tommy Mottola, who was the head of Sony Music at the time, to intentionally tank Michael Jackson's career. And so when the Invincible album comes out, in like, you know, I think it's like 2003, whatever it is, and it doesn't do well, and it sort of just isn't selling the way that Michael Jackson albums are traditionally sold. Michael claims that it's because Tommy Mottola is not giving the right marketing, is like strategically working against Michael in an effort to basically see Tom Sneddon's ultimate destruction to the end.
Okay. Here's where I think I could win some people who probably hate me back.
Nobody hates you. You're doing fine.
I don't think anybody. I hate to hear, and I hear this all the time. There's nothing worse than somebody saying that like the reason that they're not getting the marketing money for any creative project is the result of a grand conspiracy that starts with like the DA's office. Like that kind of stuff is absurd to a whole nother degree. I'll tell you right now, there is a project that Bashir and I have worked on. I'm not going to say which project it is because I'm not Dave Chappelle and I can't call anybody out. But like the marketing was so not what I wanted it to be. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I just thought, you know, you put more people. This is one of our shows. And I feel like both of our shows, I feel like Southside and Sherman Showcase. I don't feel like either of these shows have ever lost a fan. But I do think that in both cases, quite honestly, I think it's okay to say, I think in both cases, more could have been done, more can be done to let people know that these are shows that they should watch.
100%.
And the people who watch Southside reach out to me all the time. They're just like, I think this is the funniest show. And why am I not hearing about it the same way I'm hearing about some other shows? And the same with Sherman Showcase. They're like, this show is so funny and different. I don't know why IFC, because we were on IFC. Now we're on AMC. It might be a completely different ballpark, but because that's a much bigger station. But I'll even take it a step further. I won't say, but there's a very famous writer producer in this business who a lot of people who aren't even in the business know, because he or she is just, they're just very, very big, prominent. They're very unhappy right now with the way that their news shows are being marketed.
Yeah.
And, marketing dollars are what people compete for at Netflix. So you'll get like a Ryan Murphy, and I'm trying to think of somebody I don't know at Netflix, but Ryan Murphy and somebody else I know that they'll literally be like, you got to promote my show.
Yeah.
Like, don't depend on just the algorithm. Promote the show. And they're 100% right. Marketing money is the hardest thing to come about. These marketing they are not getting phone calls from the deep state saying, you got to sync the next season of, Love is Blind because we're not happy with somebody else.
Well,
So that's not, that ain't how the business works.
I think that's a fair point, but I will add that Michael Jackson also maintains that Tommy Mottola was a racist, and that was part of his enthusiasm.
Two things can be true at the same
it was
time.
part of his enthusiasm in joining forces with Tom Sneddon in the first place, that he's like a racist.
Well, Tommy Mottola, that was Sony, right?
That was Sony. He was the head of Sony.
See, I think that Sony had a little bit of it in for Mike, just because, he had formerly been one of their biggest artists, but then at some point he became like this, giant albatross for them. And I do think that, because it's not like you can pay him way less money for a new album. You know what I mean? Like,
and the people at Sony argued, there were executives at Sony that argued, hey man, maybe don't have so many scandals about pedophilia and we can put more money behind you in a way that you would like. Now, it is worth noting.
Sound less absurd. It starts to sound less absurd. I'll give you that.
It is worth noting that there is a news conference, a basically like a press conference that Michael Jackson hosts at one point with Al Sharpton and Johnny Cochran. I think Johnny's in the room, but he isn't up on stage. But it's Michael and Al Sharpton on stage.
Like, hey, I'll be in the room.
Hey.
I'll be in the room.
I'll be there in spirit, brother. You know what it is. But he has a press conference where he and Al Sharpton are on stage, basically accusing Tommy Mottola and Sony and the music industry as a whole of being racist and sort of like strategically corrupt against black artists. And at one point, this is my favorite thing, Michael refers to Tommy Mottola as a meanie, a racist, and very, very, very devilish. That's what he says.
I'm telling you, man. I think to be rich, black, and mega famous in the 90s was to essentially, and I'm giving a lot of benefits of doubt here, but I think it was essentially to bump up against, two things at once. One was on the executive table, there were no black executives, unless you were like Andre Harrell or Puffy. Like, you were not going to come across. L.A. Reid was doing something at the time. Actually, Babyface might have been too. But there's a different generation and a different breed of white executives sitting across the table. So if you can imagine being sort of like a black and consciously black person having to deal with some of the nonsense and some of the assumptions that the people you were dealing with across that table, I can hardly blame them for, just think about the number of people who went out and found the Nation of Islam to provide them security.
100%.
Like, that was a thing back then. Like, they were just like, I don't trust off-duty LAPD. Are you kidding me? Like, nowadays everybody hires the off-duty police. But like back then, like, it was definitely like Ice Cube, Michael Jackson, Michael Tyson, like everybody was hiring the NOI. I can't even imagine. They were reaching out to Al, Sharpton, it's just, I can't imagine what they were probably putting up with.
I will say there is something very ironic, though, of Michael Jackson at this point in his career sort of claiming racism is the issue when he has been, and maybe it's because of the vitiligo, but he basically is now completely white, and everybody we know up to this point in your life has been a white person holding your hand, be it a sweet little white boy or be it, a fucking the White Diamonds lady, Elizabeth Taylor. Like every person in your life, as far as your inner circle goes, is a white person. Now you're like, yeah, Tommy Mottola is trying to take me out.
I think that was Quincy still in his life at this point? I think Quincy had probably moved on.
I think Quincy had moved on. I think Quincy had
Diana Ross was still there, I think.
Diana Ross is still there, but she's not necessarily in the popular zeitgeist.
Listen, this is what there needs to be a term like for like, I feel like Kanye's in and out. It's the Calabasas phase of your life, right? Like,
sure.
You're basically living in a gated community surrounded by a bunch of people. Those parent-teacher conferences at Pacific Palisades High School are like really intense. And I think that at some point you're just like, oh, this guy drives a Model X like I do. Okay.
All right. Well,
he has some shared stuff in mind, So, yeah, I don't know. Apparently you can only go in one of two directions. You're either going to go Nation of Islam or your entire circle is going to be white. And I feel like there has to be a happy medium. I'll tell you when I get there.
Yeah, I was about to say, hey, I'm looking for somebody to figure it out. Here's my favorite part of this entire controversy that happened is that Michael Jackson at one point was so angry and so sort of put off by what Tom Sneddon is supposedly doing to him in his life, his career, that he in fact made a diss track against him. A diss track. I don't know Michael to do diss tracks.
I feel like, what I said I didn't remember. But now that I know the role that this guy plays in his life, now I'm absolutely, I feel like I could see this guy's, like, he looks like one of those, like, he looks like a Simi Valley type guy who's, like, really got it in for Michael Jackson. But go ahead. It's starting to sound familiar.
Michael makes a diss track that ends up on the History album called, where it's called DS, and it refers to a guy named Dom Sneddon because he didn't want to get in trouble.
He wanted to do a sub tweet.
Exactly. So he has a full song about an evil man named Dom Sneddon, and the chorus of the song goes, Dom Sneddon is a cold man. Over and over again, he repeats, Dom Sneddon is a cold man. And that's how much Michael felt. Tom Sneddon, a.k.a. Tom Sneddon, was trying to ruin his life and career.
Somebody in that studio was like, Mike, we can make this a B-side. It can be on the single. And Mike was like, no, this makes the album.
All right.
This makes the album.
Michael, just wait 5 years. There's going to be these things called mixtapes, and you could just put it on there.
Just let it go. Look, we'll get with Dark Child. He wants to work with you. Like, we don't have to put this on the album.
You're like, nah, this has to be the first track.
This has to. Exactly. Have you heard Shots Fired yet?
I love that. All right, we're going to take one more break, and we'll be back with more Diallo Riddle and more My Mama Told Me. And we are back.
If you want to reach those kids on the street, then you gotta do a rap to a hip-hop beat. So I gave my sermon an urban kick. My rhymes are fly, my beats are sick. My crew is big and it keeps getting bigger. That's 'cause Jesus Christ is my nigga.
Yeah, we're back here with more.
What is that from? I feel like that's not the first time I've heard that, but what is it from?
I don't know. I found it on YouTube, and it's like, I think this like youth pastor type thing.
Is it like a public access show?
Yeah, it's like a public access show with a bunch of people trying to convince people to come to God, I guess. I can't tell if it's real or not. I love it more than anything.
Fun fact, my whole first experience in television is public access because my brother basically ran public access in Atlanta.
Oh, shit.
And my brother's 21 years older than me. So my first time in a TV studio, my first time on camera, all that stuff when I was 8 was because Tony was basically running I forget what it's called, People's Network in Atlanta, which was our all access show.
So you were just saying the worst of what television could be, and you were like, yeah.
I thought television was a dark, scary place.
I'm going to make this better.
With no props.
Just somebody in a black box theater saying horrifying things at 3 a.m.
Yeah. I had a show called Wild and Crazy Kids, and me and my nephew, who was obviously my same age as me, because he was so much older, and our neighborhood friend, we would get up there and just do like really low rent, parodies of our favorite movies and songs. And it's amazing to me because I feel like That is exactly what I do at Sherman Showcase.
Sure.
I just do parodies of movies. I've been doing it since I was 8. So there you go.
But now you got some resources. Look at that.
Oh, yeah, man.
Look at God.
I can afford 2 wigs and 1 fake gun now. So life is good.
Hell yeah. All right, let's play a game. I have a very fun game that I'd love to play with you. This game is a little something I like to call Homemade Hotep.
Homemade Hotep.
Okay, the way that this game works, Diallo, I am going to introduce to you a true fact, a standard fact that is sort of understood in the world. It doesn't have to be a fact we all know, but it is in fact a fact. And what I would love for you to do is turn that fact into some Hotep shit. Really flip it on its head and tell me all the deep, dark secrets that might be hiding underneath that fact that the world doesn't want us to know about.
I'm here to spit truth.
Yes, spit that truth. Go crazy. Here it is. The fact that I will present to you. It turns out that high heels were first designed for men. That at the end of the 16th century, Persian-inspired style was all the rage in Europe, and high heels were now being marketed to men, and originally were marketed to men as a presentation of a man's virility and masculinity. Talk to me about what's underneath that fact.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the honest truth is that here's what they don't want to tell you. Those heels usually were sharpened to a bit at the end, like the heel part.
Yep.
And the men would walk over their slaves and indentured servants in those heels. That's how they kept them in charge. That's why I always tell, black women should not be wearing heels because that is a weapon. I mean, you wouldn't wear whips and chains, don't wear heels. That was a weapon.
I love that. That master, don't do that. Master gonna come in with his heely boots. And he gonna...
You hear that? Click, click, click. Nah, man. And now you got all these people talking about, I got red bottoms. The original red bottoms was the blood of the slaves that they were walking on.
Oh no.
Crazy.
Oh no. Master's on his catwalk. Get the fuck out of here.
Do you know the real history of Louboutin?
I don't. Tell me.
Christian Louboutin, terrible slaveholder.
Oh shit. Is that true?
Yeah, I'm just here. I'm just here to spit the facts.
God damn, Christian Louboutin. If I could say your name the correct way, I'd tell you you're the goddamn devil. I hate you.
There you go, man.
Well, that was beautiful. You nailed it. What a fun time. Diallo, can you tell the people at home where they can find you? What cool shit you have going on? Any of that?
Sherman Showcase is always on Hulu. You can watch season 1. You can watch the Black History Month Spectacular, which I think is just... If you've never seen the show before, watch the Black History Month Spectacular. It's an hour long, but it's some of the best work that we've ever done. So check that out on Hulu. More importantly, to all the fans of Southside will be returning.
Yeah.
We'll be shooting season 2. By the way, I want to say this on here. I Need You in season 2 of Sherman Showcase 2. We wrote a great comeback for Smokey Robinson.
Oh, beautiful.
You are our in-house Smokey. And it's a nice big chunk of an episode. So you're coming back for that.
I love it.
For those of you who are real Southside fans, I mean, you got Alan Gale and Adam Bethune talking to one another. So see, clearly we're not enemies in real life, but you will see both of them in space. You will see so much of them in season 2. I don't want to give anything away plot wise, but season 2 of Southside, we haven't shot it yet because of COVID. But if this vaccine works, and we can get enough of our cats to take it. Because that's a whole other conspiracy theory. Or is it really Tuskegee?
If we can get this black-ass cast of people in Chicago to take an experimental drug, we can make a hell of a television show.
We might have to get Barack himself to show up on set and be like, look, guys, I'm taking it myself. We will shoot that in April and May and the first half of June. We will edit it in the summer, and we will hopefully get that to you on HBO Max in the fall. And this is where you can actually, if Dave Chappelle can get his stuff taken off of Netflix, I want you guys to pressure, email, text, whatever you guys got to do to HBO Max. Let them know that you want to watch season 1 of Southside now.
Right now.
I think their plan is that they want it to come on sometime during the summer. That is too long. That means it will be off the air effectively for 2 years. We don't want that. Get it on HBO Max sooner. I don't know what their number is, but you can DM, you can I don't know, leave comments on HBO Max postings, but tell them you want to see Southside on HBO Max sooner rather than later. I don't think it costs them anything to do it. And we would love you to have access to that on HBO Max sooner than later.
You heard it here, folks. Go to HBO Max. Don't you dare watch Chappelle's Show. You absolutely must request Southside instead. Even though they're both made by the same monster that eats our souls, we're looking for this monster to help us out and get Southside on the air.
We just want people to see the labor of our hard work. Langston knows this because he's one of our extremely talented writers. We work so hard on Southside.
It's a great show.
And it's a great show. So just like if you got to, just buy it on iTunes or Amazon. But sincerely, like, we just want you to see the show. So that's all.
Yeah, and please follow Diallo online. What's your social media?
I'm simple. I'm just at Diallo.
At Diallo.
On Twitter and on Instagram.
On Twitter and Instagram. So cool. So
6
funny.
letters, Diallo.
Hell yeah. And as always, you can follow me at Langston Kerman on all of those things. And please, if you have any drops, if you have any cool things you want to send us, you can send it to mymommapod@gmail.com. Feel free to like and subscribe and write mean comments if that's what you're into. Otherwise, goodbye forever.
Take care, guys.